I overheard them talking about me at Christmas. They planned to humiliate me in front of everyone. That night, Mom called, furious. I answered calmly, "Were you? Did you enjoy my gift?" No one expected me to stay quiet. Has anyone here ever missed a family gathering because they felt pushed out? I keep wondering what fairness really means in families as we age. I'd like to hear your experiences. I'm 62 now, the oldest of 3 brothers. We grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other. My mother always favored Martin, the youngest. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it was there. I tried to ignore it for years. At family dinners, she'd ask Martin about his plans or praise his choices more than mine. No matter what I did, the attention rarely shifted my way. I told myself it didn't matter. But deep down, I felt like an outsider in my own family. The middle brother, Peter, seemed to get by without much fuss. Martin was the golden child. As we grew older, the difference became more clear. My parents trusted Martin with the family business plans. I was left out of those talks. Even when I asked, the answers were vague or dismissive. By the time I reached my 40s, the family gatherings lost their warmth. They felt like an obligation. I went because it was expected, not because I wanted to be there. Martin would get more time with my mother and father, and I was reduced to small talk or silence. I never spoke up much. It felt pointless. When we discussed the future, Martin's opinions were listened to. Mine were barely noted. When my father fell ill, the decisions about his assets were made quickly, mostly with Martin and Peter. I was informed after the fact. Looking back, I see how the pattern shaped everything. The quiet exclusion, the favoritism, the subtle messages that my role in the family was always smaller. It didn't happen overnight. It built up slowly, leaving me with a sense of distance and bitterness that lasted for years. That Christmas stands out in my memory. I arrived at my parents' house, carrying the usual dish I made every year. It was an effort, but I thought family meant something. When it came time to open gifts, I saw my name on a small box. I peeled the paper back and found a cheap mug inside. It looked like something from a dollar store. Across the room, Martin was unwrapping a watch. A nice watch, the kind I knew cost well over $100. Our mother was sitting between us, watching how we reacted. She laughed a little. "Just a little joke," she said, smiling as if that explained it. I nodded and smiled back, but it stung. I held the mug carefully, as if it might break. I thought of the time and money I'd spent to get gifts for everyone else. I thought of the years I'd helped out quietly around the house, fixing things, mowing the lawn, even handling bills when my father was too tired. Yet here I was, given something so small, so thoughtless. Martin caught my eye and smirked. He didn't say anything, but his look said it all. I could feel the coldness in the room grow heavier. Our mother swapped the mug between her hands like a child playing with a toy, then turned to Martin and said, "You got the better gift, don't you think?" I didn't respond. I didn't want to make a scene. I put the mug down on the table and forced myself to join the conversation. They moved on quickly. Martin showed off his watch like it was a trophy. I sat back, feeling smaller, like I was invisible. That night, as I left their house, the mug sat in my car. I kept it for a while, maybe as a reminder or proof. I wasn't sure. It was a small thing, but it marked how little I mattered in that family. I thought about speaking up, but what would I say? Why do you treat me like this? I didn't want to sound like I was begging for respect. Over the years, gifts like that kept coming. Always less, always an afterthought. I realized it wasn't about the presents. It was about how they saw me. My parents saw Martin as a son who deserved their attention. Me? I was just there, a shadow in the background. That Christmas was more than a gift. It was a message. One I didn't understand fully back then, but I felt it deep down. I wasn't part of the inner circle, and no cheap mug was going to change that. It was early March when Martin called me about Easter plans. His voice was casual, almost dismissive. "Bring dessert and don't be late," he said before hanging up. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just the usual brief instructions, nothing warm or inviting. On Easter, I arrived a little early, hoping to help or at least say hello before the meal started. When I walked in, I saw the table already set and people eating. The food was on the table, and laughter was filling the room. But there was no place for me. I looked around for a seat. The main table was full. No one had saved me any space. I stepped back and found a folding chair pushed against the far wall. It was the only spot left. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I sat there quietly. Martin caught my eye briefly, but didn't make any move to invite me over. I understood. I was clearly the last person to arrive. Maybe they thought I would be late, but I was early. They had started without me. That felt like a message. I brought the dessert I had made myself. It was a simple carrot cake, nothing fancy. I placed it on the side table where the drinks were and sat down. No one offered me a plate or a drink. I helped myself later, but it was mostly silent around me. No one came to chat. The conversation swirled around me, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to interrupt or seem needy. I wasn't surprised at the coldness. It was just how it had been for years. They treated me like a guest, not family. Martin's younger brother, Tom, who had always been the favorite, was at the head of the table. Everyone leaned toward him when he spoke. I saw how they hung on his words. I tried not to look bitter, but it stung. After a while, I got up to get more water. I passed by Martin, who was still busy talking with others. He glanced at me but said nothing. I asked if he wanted more dessert. He shook his head. "We're full," he said without looking up. It felt like a dismissal. When the meal ended, the others stayed at the table chatting. I remained in my corner, quietly clearing my plate. No one invited me to join them. I didn't push. I didn't want to cause a scene. I just wanted to be included. Later, when it was time to leave, Martin said, "Thanks for the dessert. Next time, don't bring so much." His tone was sharp but quiet. I nodded and left. Outside, the cold air hit me harder than usual. I held the empty dessert box and walked to my car alone. That night, I thought about what had happened. The exclusion was nothing new, but it still hurt. They had the chance to make me feel welcome, but they chose not to. It was a small thing, missing a seat, but it said a lot about how they saw me. I realized then that I was always on the outside, not invited early, not welcome fully, always an afterthought. They expected me to come, to bring something, to not complain, but never to belong. It was a pattern I couldn't ignore anymore. I promised myself I wouldn't let this happen again. Not that night, not at the next holiday or family event. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I knew I had to find a way to stop being the invisible one. Easter was supposed to be about family. For me, it was just another reminder I wasn't part of theirs. That November, Martin called a family meeting. He said he wanted us all to chip in for a big Christmas dinner at his place. I thought it was a good idea. After all, we hadn't had a proper family gathering in years. When I offered to help with the cost, Martin waved it off. "You can just bring the wine," he said flatly. "We've got the important stuff handled." I nodded, but his tone didn't invite discussion. It felt like he was setting my role in stone. My mother didn't say much. She just agreed with him. "Yes, that's fine," she said. Her voice was quiet, but there was no hesitation. I realized then she was siding with Martin, the eldest. It was nothing new, but hearing it so plainly still stung. I didn't argue. I brought the wine, the cheapest bottle I could find. It didn't seem to matter. The important stuff, as Martin called it, was covered by my father and my brother, and I was there to fill in the gaps, the extras. At the dinner, Martin and Dad took charge. They ordered the food, hired a caterer, and arranged the seating. I watched as they planned everything without asking me. My mother helped set the table, quietly. I poured the wine when asked, but wasn't invited to do more. The whole evening, I felt like a guest, not family. Martin made jokes about how I was the wine guy. The others laughed, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to spoil the night with complaints. Besides, this was their event, not mine. Later, when the bill came, Martin handed me a smaller share of the expenses. "You already did your bit," he said, pointing to the wine bottle I brought. My mother nodded again. It was clear my money wasn't as important. I thought about saying something, but the words caught in my throat. It wasn't just about money. It was a message behind it. I wasn't expected or want to contribute like the others. My place was fixed below them. After the dinner, I cleaned up quietly. No one thanked me, not even my mother. I left early, not wanting to hang around. On the way home, I felt empty. It was another reminder that my family didn't see me as equal. I told myself it was just a dinner, but it wasn't. It was how they saw me all along. The favorite son got the big role. I got the small part, and no one cared to change it. It was a week before Christmas when I decided to stop by Martin's place. I wasn't really invited, but I thought I'd say hello. Our family didn't do much during the holidays anymore. The mood was always tense, and I wanted to see if maybe things could be different this year. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. The door was slightly open, so I stepped in quietly. I heard voices in the kitchen. It was Martin and Mom. They didn't notice me right away. I stood just outside the doorway, listening. Martin's voice was light, a little too cheerful for what I expected. "Wait till he sees what we got him this year," Martin said, almost laughing. There was a pride in his tone, like he was sharing a secret. "This will really surprise him." Mom answered, a bit tired but soft. "He's always so serious. Maybe this will loosen him up." She sounded hopeful, like this gift was supposed to fix something. I stayed silent. I didn't want them to know I was there. I felt a knot in my stomach. It wasn't that I cared about gifts. I never did. But hearing them talk like that, like I was some problem to be solved, made me feel smaller, like I wasn't really part of their world. Martin went on. "We had to be careful. Can't let him know too soon." His voice dropped a little, like it was important that I was left in the dark. "It's for the house. Something he won't forget." Mom laughed softly. "He never comes around. Maybe this will bring him back." I swallowed hard. They were planning something involving the house again. The house was always the issue. It was a family home, but after Dad died, everything changed. Martin got the big share. Mom made sure, and I was left with the leftovers, or nothing at all. I wanted to say something, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I turned and walked out. My footsteps were quiet on the wooden floor. I didn't look back. Outside, the cold air hit me. I stood there for a moment, trying to make sense of it all. They talked like I was a problem to be fixed with a gift, like I was a stranger to bring back, not a brother or son. It wasn't the first time I felt that way, but it still hurt. I didn't go back that day. I didn't want to ruin their plans or start an argument. The silence between us was thick enough already. I knew that whatever they had planned, it wasn't for me. It was for their own peace of mind, not for any real connection. Walking home, I thought about what Mom said. Maybe this will loosen them up. I wasn't sure if they wanted me to change or if they just wanted me to stop being a problem. Maybe both. That night, I sat alone by the window. I didn't expect a miracle. I didn't expect apologies or warmth. Just hearing those words made me realize how far we drifted, how much I was no longer part of the family I grew up with. I didn't need their gifts. I needed respect. I needed fairness. But I suspected those things were too much to ask. For now, I keep my distance and watch. Maybe someday things would change. Or maybe I'd have to change them myself. After I got off the call with my sister, I had a sinking feeling. Something wasn't right. I decided to call Paul, my other brother. I needed to know if he was in on this plan. Maybe he could explain what was going on. When Paul answered, his voice was low and hesitant. "Hey," he said, "what's up?" I asked him directly if he knew about the family meeting, the one where they planned to exclude me. There was a pause on his end. Then he said, "I know. Look, I don't want you to make a scene. It's all in fun." I could tell he was uncomfortable. The words felt half-hearted. I pressed him. "Fun? You mean when you cut me out of something important?" He sighed. "Just come to the gathering. Don't argue or cause trouble. They just want to keep things simple." I stayed silent for a moment. It was clear that Paul wasn't going to defend my place. He sounded like he wanted peace, even if that meant I was pushed aside. I told him, "I'll think about it." I didn't want to agree to anything just to keep the peace. It felt like they already decided without me. I wasn't sure if going to that meeting would help or just humiliate me more. Paul didn't say much after that. His answers were short. It felt like he was caught between sides, but unwilling to stand up. I realized he wasn't going to be an ally this time. That hurt more than the idea of being excluded. I sat back and thought about the years before. How often did Paul choose their side over mine? How often did he remain quiet when things got unfair? This call was just another reminder. After the conversation, I felt a mix of frustration and numbness. They wanted me there, but only as a silent observer, not as an equal part of the family. That wasn't something I wanted to accept, but I also didn't want to create a scene that would last for weeks. I knew the moment was coming when I had to decide what to do. Join this gathering, knowing they saw me as less, or stay away and protect myself from more humiliation. Paul's words echoed in my mind. Don't make a scene. It's all in fun. But I knew it was far from fun for me. The silence on his end said it all. He didn't have the courage to back me up. And maybe he feared losing their approval more than the damage done to me. That was the bitter truth. I hung up and stared at the phone. There was no warmth left in those family ties, at least for now. I needed to find my own way, away from their plans and their half measures. It was time to think seriously about what I wanted from them, and from myself. That Christmas Eve, I didn't go to the family dinner. After years of feeling like a shadow in the house, I decided I would stay home. I sent a plain card to my mother. It said, "Enjoy the gift. I won't be joining." No explanation, no excuses. I didn't expect much reaction, just a quiet evening alone. But that night, the phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was sharp and angry. "Where are you? Everyone's waiting," she said. There was no warmth in her tone, just impatience. I answered slowly. "Did you enjoy my gift?" I paused. Then I hung up without waiting for her reply. The silence after felt heavier than any argument. I could almost hear the disappointment through the line. It wasn't just about me skipping dinner. It was about the years she never acknowledged I felt left out. I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted to stop pretending the hurt didn't exist. My gift that year wasn't meant to buy forgiveness or smiles. It was a reminder, a simple one but firm. I thought back to all those Christmases before, where I sat at the edge of the table. My brothers and sister laughed and shared stories. I was there, but not really part of the circle. That night, I chose distance over silence. My mother didn't call back that night. No more messages or apologies. Just cold quiet. I understood then that my absence was more than a missed dinner. It was a message she made clear she didn't want to hear. I didn't expect her to change, but I needed to mark my own boundary. That card, that simple note, was the start. It wasn't about peace that evening, but about finally saying no. No more pretending I belonged where I wasn't really wanted. After I hung up, I sat alone with the quiet. It felt like a loss, but also a relief. The years of trying to be part of something I never truly was finally caught up with me. That Christmas Eve, I accepted the distance. It was mine to keep now. The days after the meeting were quiet. No one called me. No messages came either. It was as if I had disappeared. My phone sat on the table, silent. New Year's arrived with no invitation. No family gathering. No calls from any of them. I didn't expect much, but still it stung. I decided to spend the evening alone. I went to the store, bought some simple groceries, and came back to my small apartment. I cooked a meal for one. Nothing fancy, just what I could manage. The silence around me was heavy. No laughter, no shouting, no arguments. Just quiet. I ate slowly, thinking about everything that had happened. How long had I been trying to fit in? How much energy had I wasted on people who didn't want me? I remembered the years of trying to please my father, hoping for approval. The times I ignored my own needs to avoid conflict. I thought about my brothers, their easy access to money and favors. They never had to fight for a seat at the table. Not like me. At some point, I realized I was exhausted. Not just physically, but inside. I had been running on empty. Try to prove myself to a family that never really accepted me. The realization hit me hard. I was done chasing something that wasn't mine to have. I looked around the small apartment and felt a strange calm. No one was going to take this away from me. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was honest. I didn't need their approval or their inheritance to live my life. I could build something on my own terms. The night grew late. I washed the dishes and sat back down. I thought about the future. Not the one they had planned for me, but the one I could create. It was a quiet kind of freedom. Nothing dramatic, just a steady, slow acceptance. I didn't feel bitter anymore. Not exactly. More like tired of the fight. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to walk it alone, without looking back. That January, I decided to focus on carpentry. It was something I'd always enjoyed but never took seriously. The family had never encouraged any of my hobbies. They said they were just distractions. I took extra shifts at the hardware store. More hours meant more money to save. It wasn't easy work, but it gave me purpose. After a few months, I had saved enough to rent a small workshop. It was nothing fancy, just a garage space behind an old building. But it was mine. For the first time in a long while, I had a place to go that felt like my own. I bought some basic tools with the money I saved. Old but serviceable. I started making small things, shelves, boxes, stools. I sold a few to neighbors and friends. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. The family didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. I wasn't part of their plans anymore. It hurt, but I didn't mention it. The workshop became a refuge. I spent evenings there after work. It was quiet. No judgments, no comparisons. Just the smell of wood and the sound of my saw. Sometimes I thought about asking my siblings for help or advice. But I knew better. They saw me as the one who failed. The one who wasn't worth their time. I didn't need their pity or their money. I needed respect. That was harder to earn. But I was patient. I kept working, slowly building a small reputation. Word got around that I did good work. People started asking for custom pieces. It felt good to create something with my own hands, to be valued for what I could do, not who I was in the family. I wasn't rich, far from it, but I was independent. That mattered more than I realized back then. Looking back, that winter was a turning point. The moment I stopped waiting for my family to include me. Instead, I started building my own life, piece by piece. A few years went by. My small workshop slowly grew into a modest business. I had regular clients now. They came back for my work because they trusted me. I had a steady routine that I could count on. That kind of predictability was something I never had with my family. Over time, I made some new friends. These were people who respected my efforts and didn't judge me by my last name. They saw me for what I had built with my own hands. That respect felt strange at first, like something I had missed my whole adult life. It wasn't loud or grand, just quiet acknowledgments in conversations and small favors. I worked mostly with local businesses. Some were too small to compete with big companies, but they appreciated the personal touch I gave them. I learned to work on my own terms and schedule. No family meetings, no awkward silences about money or inheritance. Just honest work and honest pay. The customers didn't care about family drama or old grudges. They only wanted good service. That simplicity was a relief. I focused on improving my skills instead of worrying about who deserved what from a will. My workshop became a place I looked forward to going each day. No one there treated me like a second choice. The steady income allowed me to save a bit. Nothing fancy, but enough to plan ahead. I thought about buying a small property someday. I didn't want to depend on anyone anymore. That idea of standing on my own grew stronger each year. I started attending local community events too. It was an opportunity to meet people outside my business circle. Those gatherings didn't revolve around family ties or old grudges. They reminded me there was more to life than the bitterness I carried. At home, things were quieter. I didn't have to explain myself or justify my decisions. There were no family dinners where I felt invisible or unwanted. I had learned to say no without guilt. Sometimes that silence was the best company I could ask for. Every so often, I heard news about the family from mutual contacts. They were still caught in their own cycles of favoritism and disputes. It didn't surprise me anymore. I had seen enough to understand it was unlikely to change. Meanwhile, my business kept steady. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. More importantly, I had peace. It wasn't the loud happiness some people expect. It was a calm, steady feeling of being in control of my life. There were moments I thought about reaching out. Maybe there would be a chance to mend fences. But then I remembered those years of being sidelined and dismissed. Respect was something I couldn't demand. It had to be earned, and they had given me none. So I kept building my life quietly, day by day, project by project. I accepted that my family's version of fairness wouldn't include me. That didn't mean I was worth less. It just meant I had to find my own path. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't rush. The slow pace allowed me to rebuild, without pressure. It gave me time to heal from old wounds. And when I finally felt ready, I stepped forward with a quiet confidence. I wasn't a forgotten son anymore. I was a man with his own place and his own dignity. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was just real. Martin's big house finally went up for sale that year. It felt like the end of something we all once took for granted. I heard about it through a neighbor, not from the family. They never told me directly. That was typical. Martin had lost his job a few months earlier. It wasn't a secret. People in town talked. But none of my siblings mentioned it to me. They acted like I didn't exist. The house was always their prize, not mine. So when it came time to sell, I wasn't surprised to be left out again. My mother moved in with Paul around the same time. She said it was easier for her. I didn't argue. They'd always been closer. I figured she just wanted peace. Still, it stung to know she chose to live with my brother, who had pushed me aside. It felt like another door closing. Family gatherings stopped after that. No more birthdays or holidays. I didn't expect an invitation anyway. It wasn't a sudden decision. It had been fading for years. When we did meet, it was brief and tense. Occasionally, Paul called me. His voice sounded tired, worn out. "How are you holding up?" he'd ask, but it felt forced. I could tell he was carrying his own weight of troubles. I didn't press him for details. There was no warmth there, just duty. I answered him plainly. "I'm managing," I said once. No point in pretending otherwise. He didn't ask about my work or life. Just short questions, like checking on a distant acquaintance. That was the closest thing to contact I had with the family now. He never mentioned the house sale or the inheritance. I never brought it up. There was no use. We both knew my share had never been considered. The silence around money was heavier than any argument. It was a final reminder that I wasn't part of their plans. The years of exclusion weighed on me, but I had learned to accept it quietly. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired of fighting for something that wasn't mine. It was easier to focus on my own life, separate from them. Some nights, I wondered if things could have been different, but I knew the truth. They had chosen their side long ago. I was a forgotten son in their story, the one who didn't count. And that was how it had to be. I moved on, keeping my distance. The house was gone. The family was gone. Only memories remained, faded and distant. Paul's calls stopped after a while. I didn't miss them much. I had things to build, things they would never see. That chapter closed quietly. No words, no fights. Just a slow fading into my own world. The injustice was clear, but it no longer defined me. I was no longer their shadow, no longer waiting for approval or fairness. It was time to live for myself. Last year, out of the blue, Martin called me. His voice was quieter than I expected. He said he needed help fixing up his new place. I could hear the pressure in his tone, like he was hoping I'd say yes. But I didn't feel the same obligation anymore. I listened to him explain what needed to be done. The usual repairs, some painting, fixing cabinets. Things I could do without trouble. I kept my voice steady and polite. "I'm sorry, Martin. I can't help with that." I left it just like that. There was a pause on the other end. I could tell he was embarrassed. He muttered something about being busy or having to find someone else. The call ended quickly. No further questions. No argument. That was the first time since I'd moved out that he reached out for anything. It felt odd to hear from him after all those years of silence or cold words. I thought about it for a moment, but I didn't want to get pulled back into the old patterns. My mother never mentioned Christmas again, either. The last holiday I spent with them had been strained, as usual. She used to call every year, without fail. After the will was settled, the calls stopped. No cards, no invitations, nothing. I didn't bring it up, either. I figured if they didn't want to reach out, it was best to let it be. I had my own place now, my own traditions. It was quieter, but also easier in a way. Sometimes, I wonder if the family remembers me at all, or if I was always just the one to be ignored, the one they never really included. When Martin called, I felt that old sting again, but I also felt a small relief in saying no. I didn't want to patch things up on their terms, not after how they treated me. I'd worked hard to build my life without them. Their sudden request didn't change anything for me. There's no bitterness in refusing anymore, just a quiet understanding. They made their choices. I made mine, and last year's call was just a reminder of that. Now, after all these years, I see it clearly. The dust has settled, and I have my own space, stability, dignity, things I was denied before. I don't feel the old anger every day anymore. It comes up sometimes, but I don't carry it with me. They live with the choices they made. My siblings and my mother chose their paths long ago. They pushed me out, ignored me, made it clear I wasn't welcome. I could have fought harder or stayed bitter. Instead, I chose to build something else. Quietly, patiently. I don't wish them harm. There's no pleasure in that. What happened wasn't about revenge for me. It was about fairness, which they never understood. They lost a brother, and I lost a family that I once believed in. It's a sad truth, but it is what it is. The holidays are the hardest part. I don't miss the old gatherings or the hollow smiles. I don't miss pretending everything was fine. It was never fine for me. I remember sitting in that cold dining room, feeling invisible. I remember the little remarks, the way they shared stories that excluded me. I chose not to go back to that. My own holidays now are quiet. I have a small group of friends who become like family. We share meals without expectations or old grudges. I've learned to enjoy peace over pretense. It took time, and sometimes loneliness crept in, but I'm at a place where I feel whole. Sometimes, I wonder what it would have been like if things were different, if fairness was the rule, not favoritism. But I don't dwell on these thoughts. They don't serve me. The past shaped me, but it does not define me. I'm content with what I have and who I am. I worked hard to get here. No one handed me anything. I made my own way, even when the path was lonely. That kind of strength comes quietly, without applause. They still live close by, but our lives barely touch. Sometimes I hear about them through others. It's not bitterness, just distance. I'm not the person I was when I needed their approval or their acceptance. That need faded a long time ago. What I learned most is that family isn't always about blood or shared history. Sometimes it's about respect, and sometimes that respect has to be earned or rebuilt. In my case, it never came from them. So, I found it within myself and with those who truly care. Looking back now, I don't regret walking away. It was the only way I could survive without losing myself. I don't feel smaller or less because of what they did. I feel stronger for moving on. In the end, the injustice they dealt me became a quiet fuel, not for anger, but for resilience. And that is something no one can take away. I accept how things turned out. It wasn't what I hoped for, but it's the reality I live with now. Sometimes, distance is the only fairness you get from family. I stopped hoping they would treat me right. That made it easier to carry on. I found quiet in my own life. I built what I have slowly, step by step. No shortcuts, no sudden windfalls. Just steady work and careful choices. It wasn't easy, but it gave me something they never did. Respect for myself. The hurt doesn't disappear, but it fades. I don't dwell on old arguments or unfair words anymore. There's no point in chasing approval. That was never meant for me. I've learned to value the peace I have more than the chaos I left behind. Their choices shape their path, not mine. The people who push me aside now face their own struggles. I don't take pleasure in that, but it feels fair in the long run. Life has a way of balancing things out without me needing to intervene. I'm not bitter every day, just realistic. I accept that family isn't always a place of justice or kindness. Sometimes it's just a chapter you close. I'm stronger for having lived through it and moved past it. Now, I focus on what I can control, my own life, my own home, my own peace. That's the quiet justice I found in the end. It's been 6 years since the will was settled. I see Paul every few months now. He calls or texts, and I meet him for coffee sometimes. Our talks are polite, nothing deep. I keep things light because I don't want to reopen old wounds. Martin and I rarely speak at all. When we do, it's short and tense. He still holds the past against me. I don't push. There's no point in forcing connection where there's none. I've accepted that some relationships just fade. My mother sent occasional card on holidays or birthdays. No phone calls, no visits. That's fine with me. I don't expect more. We both keep our distance now. I think she's settled into her own quiet life. I feel calm about all this. There's no anger left inside me. Those feelings drained out a long time ago. What's left is a quiet distance, like a wall I built to protect myself. It's not bitterness, just a clear space where I don't have to feel hurt. My life has settled too. I live in a modest home I bought with my own money. Work keeps me busy and gives me purpose. I have friends and colleagues who respect me. I'm not rich, but I'm stable and independent. Looking back, I don't regret stepping away. Sometimes fairness comes too late, and only in small ways. But I'm stronger now. I learned to rely on myself. That's something no one can take away. I spent years thinking about that Christmas, the one I skipped. At first, I thought I should have just played along, smiled, kept quiet. But every time I tried, it felt worse. Being treated like I didn't belong stayed the same. I don't know if I was wrong to walk away. Maybe I should have stayed and tried harder. But fairness and family, to me now, means respect and honesty, not just who gets what or who's forgotten. I rebuilt my life away from all that. It was slow and quiet. No grand payback, just steady work. Meanwhile, those who push me out face their own troubles. That's enough justice for me. So I wonder, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have stayed for the holidays, pretending everything was fine? Or step back like I did? How do you define fairness in a family that's never been fair?